Customer Engagement Strategies for Accelerated Digital Transformation and ROI. This will be moderated by Dana Team from Divide by Zero. Please come up on stage. We will be joined by Rohan from Coles Group, Daniel Elder from EVT, and Alex Savage from ABS CVN.
Welcome, everyone. Look, according to a study by McKinsey in 2021, companies that prioritise customer experience and digital transformation across the customer lifecycle can increase customer loyalty by 30 to 50%, which is easy for McKinsey to say, but incredibly challenging to actually do. So I'd like you to join us, not that you really have a choice, for an insightful panel discussion where we delve into integrating customer lifecycle into digital transformation and how those strategies achieve enhanced ROI and better customer outcomes. In this session, we'll explore the symbiotic relationship between customer lifecycle, digital transformation, and how those synergies accelerate ROI and long-term success. Our panel of experts, and they are experts, have been at the forefront of digital transformation in their respective organisations. Luckily, we will get to share their insights, experiences, strategies that empower us all on embarking transformation journeys and, more importantly, prioritising the customer at every stage. Now, I have a note here to call you to stage, but you're actually already up here, so I don't need to do that. What I would like to start with is, I guess, introductions. Tell us a little bit about who you are, your company, what you do, and more importantly, maybe a bit of a fun fact or something that we wouldn't find out about you if we stalked you on social media. Rohan, I'll start with you.
All right, I'll go first. Hi, everybody. Good to be here. My name's Rohan Gupta. I help articulate Coles Group's digital strategy and transformation, do some customer personalization work on the side. I've spent the last decade and some change working two careers. One's been corporate strategy with BCG, a consulting firm, and then consumer good and retail firms. The second part of my career has been in social impact, where I've worked on the Sustainable Development Goals. I've done 4 years of Indigenous development up in Cairns, so that's been fun. And the fun fact about me is I've in fact just started my third role, which is as a primary carer for Ray, my 7-month-old baby boy. So knee-deep in diapers and, all sorts of baby food and sleepless nights.
Cool. Thank you. Over to you, Daniel.
Yeah, cheers. Nice to be here. Thanks to MoEngage for having us. This is the best panel of the day, by the way, so, so Daniel Elder, Group Loyalty Manager for EVT. Most people might not know who EVT is as a brand, but we are Ridges, QT, Event Cinemas, Threadbow. That's our group. This is a new role as Group Loyalty Manager. One of the issues we found was this is a perfect example of business transformation with very siloed businesses within one business, and also within each of those businesses, they have their own challenges. So I'm only 4 months into the role, so I'm also head deep in other things. I also have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, so I'm head deep in that as well. Head deep in everything. And so I guess one of the really big things about that role is there's separate loyalty programs within each of the businesses. So Cinebuzz within Event Cinemas, Priority Guest Rewards, PGR for Ridges and QT, and then there's My Threadbow for Threadbow guests as well, and each of them have their own loyalty challenges. And in a business that's founded in 1910, so coming up 113 years old, there's a lot of legacy and change is hard. That's probably a bit of the background on that role. I've been on the other side of it throughout my career, whereby I've been in the BAU of digital and executing and wondering why things aren't changing. We'll get on to this soon, but I think the key thing is that you've got to be willing to change and actually resource it properly and have this conversation. Even the fact we're having this conversation is the start. Probably the random fact about me is I used to be a hang glider pilot and came fourth at the New Zealand Nationals once.
Wow.
There you go.
That's impressive.
I don't know who would say they ever came fourth in anything, but
Well,
but I did it, so there's a random.
Well done.
thank you, Daniel. Alex.
Alex Savage, Head of Digital Analytics at ABS CVN. ABS-CBN is the largest media conglomerate in the Philippines, been around for 65 years. I was brought on to set the strategy and execute on it for data within digital. It's been quite a journey there. When I joined, there was no data, no respect for data either, so I really had to go and coach and mentor and find champions within the various teams and set them up, empower them with the data, the tools and the skills that they needed to increase their performance over time. Random fact about me, I enjoy long walks on the beach. But because I work remotely, I take my calls while walking along the beach. I'm really hanging out for Google's new AI product that removes the background noise as well from calls, because sometimes those waves interfere a bit.
Thank you, Alex. It's a good fun fact. Rowan, I'm going to start with you. Coles has been in the midst of a very successful digital transformation. I'm going to rattle off some numbers, and you will all be tested later if you want a drink. So just get your little pens ready. So FY23, Coles achieved 2.8 billion in the second half e-com sales at a 116% 3-year growth rate, which is extraordinary. 63% app traffic growth, an increase of 19% in app downloads, and a 30% increase in contribution from Coles Plus, which you all are members of, and if you're not, they can come to you later. Could you deep dive into the role that personalisation of the digital experience has played in achieving all of this?
Oh, right. So I think one thing, I'll just go broader before going deeper. One thing which has always helped me sort of frame how we think about, selling goods and services to people. It's not really selling more of what you're selling. It's instead thinking about how the first principles behind how do you solve problems better. And so for instance, at Coles, we frame it from the point of view of how do we ensure that for somebody who is a 19-year-old music major in Paran, or a 40-year-old indigenous elder in Darwin, or a mum of two somewhere in Sydney, for example, how can we get them the best experience that's anywhere, anytime, anyhow? And that sort of framing is how we craft our strategy, digital strategy, and our personalization strategy. So anywhere goes into the various channels, so online, the web, the app, in-store. Anytime is how do you want it, how do you want to interact across, day, night, different times of the day. And anyhow is, if you want to collect it in store, do you want it home delivered? Do you want, do you like the ultra convenient product? Do you want a 16 minutes or less delivery? So ensuring that we build a solution set that caters to the full gamut of our customer base and is intrinsically personalized to exactly how you want your groceries, when do you want your groceries, in what shape or form do you want your groceries. I think that's really helped us. So looking at that solution set as opposed to just solving for sort of bits and pieces.
And are there any other measures that you've taken to create this consistent personalised experience?
Yep.
Anything else you can talk to there?
I think the one thing which I've really enjoyed is us moving to, the last few years, we're all talking about omni-channel experience, and we moved from multi-channel to cross-channel to now omni-channel, and it's a lot of buzzwords. But one thing which I'm really wrangling is, so at Coles, we look at our customers. So you had the regular single-channel customer online or in-store. Then they became omni-channel, and we found out that omni-channel customers are 2.2x more valuable than regular customers, single-channel customers. Now we're looking at customers that we call ROBI. So for example, researched online, buy in store, bought in store. And as we sort of go into different meeting customer demands across different channels and different shapes and forms, it raises questions around how do the unit economics of these work? How do you now talk about, because now for us it was brick and mortar versus online. And now increasingly it's a blurry sort of a beautiful mishmash of the two. So that's been interesting. And loyalty has always been an extremely large rudder for us, just propelling us forward.
Cool, thank you. Daniel, I'll turn to you. So while digital transformation is the need of the hour, the road is not always smooth. You know, you've got the complexity of picking the right technology partners, upskilling teams, managing risks, time, budget. Yourself as a champion of digital transformation, you know, you need to power through these situations on an everyday basis. In your experience, what are some of the roadblocks you've faced in getting buy-in, motivating change, and getting decision makers from teams like procurement, IT, security, leadership, and even internal marketing teams? You know, what are those roadblocks? What have you encountered?
I think the biggest issue is everyone's busy in their BAU and their short-run targets, and they're unable to easily step back and actually look at what the vision is, or maybe the company doesn't actually know what the vision or the objective is. They're just trying to put in a new shiny toy. So actually stepping back and going, what are we trying to do? Listening to the customer, how can we make those touch points better, or make their day easier and make that more enjoyable moment for them? You know, we're in hospitality, so we bridge a lot of physical and digital. So if you have a great digital experience and a bad physical experience, or a good physical experience but a bad digital, it all falls apart. So you've got to kind of do both. So I think the first things first is everyone being on the same page about what you're trying to do, and then getting them in a room to talk. Because the more players internally and externally, the more complex. It's literally exponential, right? You know, if two people have to get in a room, you try book meetings every day, right? You know what it's like. And the moment there's a few, you might have 2, 3, 4, 5 suppliers that have to be on the same call. One of them's in Amsterdam. You know, like the moment you try and do that. So you've got almost every challenge against you. But I think ultimately, if you can show everyone what you're the North Star, or what you're trying to do, and get buy-in there, and then get people in the room, they can actually start to move the project forward. So in silos, legal will be an issue. IT will be an issue. Security, privacy will be an issue. Marketing will probably be excited, but maybe too excited. Leadership will want to know how it's going to drive more money now. So you just get everyone to actually align. And I think honestly, having a clear why of why you're doing that, and working together on what that is. It's not easy to do that, obviously, but just not bolting on new tech for the sake of it, and listening to your customers, understanding what you're actually trying to do as a business, what you're offering, and then developing a clear why, communicating that to all key stakeholders. And visually, I think is a big thing. Don't just have a meeting with no agenda points. Have agenda points and visually communicate what you're trying to do. Get the key players in a room. That's the first step. And then be very agile in the way that you actually progress. So, you know, don't just have a weekly meeting for the sake of it. You know, you might need a daily meeting. You might need 2 daily meetings. You might need a fortnightly meeting. You adjust everything. Use tools that work for everyone. That's hard as well, but not just dictate a tool on everyone. And then just focus on things that aren't just, you know, what value it's going to give. Because sometimes it's about fixing a problem you actually have as well. Like there's opportunity costs, especially the data and privacy changes coming. Everyone's focusing on why you would add something on, but what happens if we don't? Is one of the big problems at the moment. We've actually got to fix this stuff. It's not just about the extra value it might add. It's about what might happen if we don't do it. So, yeah, I mean, ultimately, just communication. It sounds so overly simple, to be honest, but just having dedicated resource to drive it. So that's something that EVT's doing at the moment, which I think is working really well, is splitting out from BAU to actual dedicated project management and you know, driving the change, so that it's not just a little thing you've got to do at the end of the day that you don't have time for and you're already at 110%. It's actually having the resources dedicated to drive that change. Yeah,
awesome tips. Thank you. Alex, as we all know, first-party data is a critical asset for organisations undergoing digital transformation. You know, it supports a customer-centric strategy, personalisation, data quality, compliance, innovation, all the things that you need to have a competitive advantage. Question, data is only useful if it's accurate, reliable, and importantly accessible. according to you, what's the importance of having, tangible value in clean first-party data? And what are some of the considerations for brands that are trying to improve the accuracy and reliability of their first-party data?
Right, so the value would be reduction in cost, and that's in the form of, if you have first-party data, then you don't need to spend as much on third-party and second-party data, and increase revenue. So if you're using that first-party data for better personalization, as an example, you get better loyalty, higher LTV at a per user basis. For considerations, you can collect behavioral data quite easily. Users are on the platform, they do the thing that they're doing, and you can just get that data from them. It's a little bit more tricky to get other data sets from them. And so something like age and gender, which is a very common request. How do you get that from a user if maybe it's not really related to the product? So you need to be very careful with that. If you put in something like what's your age and gender, or what's your date of birth at the registration, they could just put in rubbish because they see no value in giving you an accurate information. Right? One way to circumvent that is to have a default date of birth, 1st of the 1st, 1900. And if they don't change it, then you can just chuck all those dates out, that's fine. But if they do change it, they're likely putting in something a bit more accurate. Otherwise, you need to incentivize them. So give them a reason, give them some additional value that they would not otherwise get. Tell them, we're going to personalize your feed because we'll know what cohort that you're in. We'll give you a feed that's more relevant to your age bracket and your gender. Or see how your content consumption compares with others in your cohort. Show them some of the data. I might be a bit biased, I like to look at data, but I think other people do too.
Well, you are head of, and so we would hope that was the case.
Well, Spotify, Year in a Wrap, that kind of pioneered that in a way, showing the end user the actual data, and it makes you feel unique, seeing your top 1% of a certain genre of you're the favorite, this is your favorite artist, and you're in the top 10%, something like that.
Strava is obviously amazing at using data in the same way.
Yeah, that's right. So that's one way to go about collecting declared data. Then there's also challenges around anonymous users and multi-devices and offline data as well. So for anonymous users, you want that data to be persisting across sessions, and without that login, then that can be a challenge. Needed to have some sort of cookie, I guess, which is decaying in value, really. So that leaves server-side fingerprinting, probabilistic, deterministic methodologies that you could use there, a blend. But cross-device is another interesting one because you've got people that are researching online, perhaps on their desktop, and they're making the purchase on their mobile phone, and they might be anonymous on one, registered in the other. And so having a system that has a device graph, and then to the next extent, the household graph, that's really beneficial. So the device graph, you'd say, well, I'm looking at a new office chair. I'm researching a bunch of chairs on the desktop. I'm looking at the one with 100 knobs and the recline feature, but it's too expensive at the moment. But my deal, I'm actually logged in on my phone, and that's where I make my purchases. I don't have that browsing history of chairs on my phone, but I do on my desktop. So having that connection from anonymous to registered across devices allows you to then go and have that targeted messaging on the device that the purchase is made from. The household graph. And so that's when my wife is browsing for things on her account, and then on my account I get that notification say, this is recommended for you or for someone in your family. That'd be great for a birthday. I'm horrible at thinking of gift ideas, so yeah.
So speaking of kind of connected data, how important is centralised data systems in breaking silos and kind of getting actionable insights into customer behaviour preferences and kind of solving for some of the things that you just spoke about?
It's important that the systems that activate the value of data have access to the data that they need in order to perform at their highest potential. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they need to be that central system of data. They just need to be able to access it. So you might look at something like a data warehouse to store all of the data, and then any system can go and access that, or it gets transferred to an activation platform. If you're transferring it between platforms, then there's some data duplication in there and additional cost. And if you're storing it all in a central data warehouse, then there's ingest duplication because it doesn't start from there, and so there's additional cost there. One strategy is to use something like a data mesh, and that's growing in popularity. So this year, it's actually become a product now, a data mesh, and it connects all the different databases together and gives a single interface layer so that different systems can go and pull out the data that they need. And so Microsoft released Fabric. Databricks has an offering as well, and Snowflake, of course, is able to handle that sort of thing. But yeah, it's critical that data is exposed to the activation platforms in some shape or form. But of course, piecing these components together, there are a lot of considerations as well.
Yeah, thank you. I guess kind of continuing on from insights. So this is for all of you. Measurement is essential in understanding, improving and optimising customer engagement efforts. It provides organisations with insights and the data necessary to build stronger customer relationships, which we've all been talking about are critical in transformation. Enhance customer satisfaction, and ultimately achieve business objectives. According to you, what are the kind of top metrics or KPIs that really measure the impact of a customer lifecycle integration and then ROI? So we've been talking about the transformation and building that across the customer lifecycle. What are the key metrics people here should be thinking about tracking and looking at?
First things first, it just depends on your business as well. It's not just to go lifetime value or annual spend or anything. So for example, Threadbow behaviour is very different to a hotel behaviour is very different to cinema going behaviour, right? So defining what the success is and understanding your customers and how often they frequent as well. So I guess if you look at RFM segmentation and how you use that to drive life cycle, if you use RFM properly, then you've kind of already answered that. I mean, ultimately retention. If you've got an acquisition and a retention play, but with life cycle marketing, I think your retention, how much more you get them to spend, how much more often you get them to come, I think that's obviously one of the key goals for any form of marketer or life cycle marketing. And depending on your business, just make sure that you're setting a good benchmark for that, and not you've got your control of what you would deem as success. Just make sure you set that realistically and based on your market, not just based on something you Googled, because otherwise you might be comparing it to the wrong metric.
Alex, do you have a view?
Yeah, so I look at maybe customer lifecycle management at the portfolio level. So when you're looking at that as a piece of the puzzle, and are you going to invest in MoEngage or not? Because there is a spend there, right? And you want to get a return on that for customer lifetime value, and there's a people cost as well to operate it. So how do you go about doing that? I tie everything back to revenue in some shape or form, because we've got the revenue data and it's connected to user data. And for the way that I tried that out and was able to measure the value of CLM within the system is I've got a holdout of 5% of users that we do not engage in that way. So they're not on MoEngage. Any new user that comes in, they've got a 1 in 20 chance of becoming part of that holdout group as well. And so we can see, the lifetime value and extrapolate that to calculate the ROI of this investment in the technology and the people. And yeah, it's worked out so far. There was some hesitancy around having that holdout because these are people that have got a higher churn rate. Yeah, they consume less, not as engaged, they don't refer as many friends, that sort of thing, because we're not able to, or we are not prompting them to do so. We're not giving them that messaging at the right time, or at all, really.
So there's a trade-off there between getting that insight and potential customer impact of it.
It's a trade-off.
Yeah.
It's a trade-off, yeah.
Rohan, given the complexity of Coles, have you guys simplified anything down in terms of measurement that helps you identify what you're transforming is working? I mean, the numbers are pretty impressive, so maybe you don't need to worry, but...
No, look, we always need to worry. I think we do most of the standard stuff, which is, we track acquisition cost, lifetime value, churn rate, drop-off points, and so forth. What I particularly enjoy is when we look at the velocity of our, we call this the law of the few. So most passionate evangelists across channels, so we've sort of come up with a framework on how we track the way they talk about us, where they talk about us, what are they saying. And as we innovate and think about launching control trials for a new product range or a new time slot for delivery, or if you're doing a drone trial in ACT or what have you. So just being able to talk about, to understand what is it exactly that makes our most passionable evangelists talk about us, capturing that and being able to try to replicate that across the larger customer segments, that's something we spend a lot of time on. And also, of course, the other end of the spectrum is for customers who've ceased being a customer. So what's changed? And we spend countless dollars and hours and an effort in trying to just understand that, because there's a lot of noise. In today's day and age, you go into various forums and Medallia and Voice of Customer, there's so much of noise. How do you cut through that and really glean the insights that can then be used to make business decisions?
Thank you. All right, last pearls of wisdom, and then you guys are released. Continuous learning and kind of adapting to what is a ever-changing, and complex environment that everyone in this room is probably facing. What are some of the strategies that everyone here can employ to kind of keep across the landscape and keep up with everything that's happening so they can succeed?
I think you've segued nicely into it. Is that listening, or like NPS detractors, going through the qual? Actually, I mean, with AI now, you don't even need to, really. But like digging into the why they're leaving is just as important as why they're staying. In fact, it's more important, right? I think that's one of the best things is listening. Or if you're not surveying, survey. And then obviously listen more, engage more, because that's where you glean your customers and then be customer-led. If you're not doing that, then you can't do any of the other stuff we've been talking about today.
Alex, any tips for keeping...
Just need to be prepared for change as the customer tastes and behavior changes over time. What worked yesterday and today might not work tomorrow. And it's easy to get stuck in a certain way of doing things because it has worked in the past, or this is the way that we have done things. But it's important to take a step back and analyze the current state and what the future state looks like it is going to be, and consider how to change the behavior and the organization to support the need of the customer.
Awesome.
Can I chime in here with one thing? So, done a fair bit of work on innovation labs, and so when we talk about transformation, and there's so much happening in the landscape around us, there's a very tantalizing prospect within organizations, no matter how small or large you are, to do everything, everywhere, all at once. And one thing which I think almost everybody overlooks, and I'm really passionate about enforcing, is be very intentional about what you want to do, where to play, how to win, obsess over the reducing the cost of experimentation. Because speed in itself intrinsically has become a differentiator in today's day and age. So the agility to not do everything and then sort of spend a lot of time thinking about, oh, what's worked, what's not worked, but just thinking about, look, here's what we want to do, and this is what we'll do quickly, try quickly. And if it, try fast, fail fast, doesn't work, move on to the next thing, but just be intentional. I mean, even with Coles, we've got, fortunately, a multi-billion-dollar experimentation budget. But I think we spend a lot of our time just chucking ideas into the bin and being very intentional about that.
I couldn't agree more on that, coming to what you both just said, because if you try and do too much, also they take longer, consumers' needs and preferences change, and then by the time that thing you put live, you get it live, it doesn't work. It's because it's taken so much longer to get to market, and it might have actually been a good idea. 4 years could have been, if it was live in a year, you might have had 2 years of really been leading the market, right? But if you do too much at once, you can't get them to market as fast, and people move quickly these days. Preferences, devices, everything's changing so fast.
Yeah, that's really where you can take an iterative approach. So the fast experimentation, if you can get something out quickly and learn from it, you can iterate on that and evolve it over time instead of working towards this big bang, which you don't know until it's out if it works or not. You can't learn, you can't adapt.
Exactly.
We're at time, but these guys are available later on if you've got any questions. Rohan, I want to thank you, Daniel, Alex. That's been a great panel. Appreciate you coming out
Cheers,
tonight.
Daniel.
Thanks.